Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, we ask that you kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices or place them on silent. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully you can all understand. Welcome everyone. This will be a very non-traditional funeral service for a non-traditional man. As all the close friends and family in this room probably know, Lionel, my father, did not believe in organized religion, saying it was baloney, although that's not the word that he used, and that he did not believe in God. He was a Jewish man living a Jewish life on his own terms. So, we are keeping the prayers and psalms to a minimum, in fact, pretty non-existent. There's no rabbi, although we do have a rabbi as a mourner, that's thank you. And no cantor. There will be no singing, notwithstanding his beliefs or his non-beliefs, however. He asked me a few months ago if I would say Kaddish for him, which is the Jewish prayer for the dead. And I said, of course, which comforted him, I think. My sister Kathy, the real old one, will be up first with our perspective of our father.
Yeah, we have a mic list.
Thank you all for coming. He was a second father to me. I adored him. I loved him. What a force he was. He was my childhood idea of urbanity and savoir-faire. Unfailingly kind, not another person like him. A legend. He always had such class and dignity. What an icon. Your father was a giant. A king has fallen. These are just a few of the words that have been said to one or another of us over the past several hours since our father left us, and each text and email brought on a torrent of tears and a pain in my heart that I don't know will ever subside. But it is incredibly moving and gratifying to know that he was so universally adored. Our father always loved words, studied them, always playing around with them and finding the best way of using them. He passed this along to us. We have a lot of writers in our family. And yet I was having trouble finding my own words today. Although curmudgeon leaps to mind. It was something he adored people saying about him. It's a description that really fit him to a T. I'm sure that many of you knew what a wordsmith he was, and he had a deep appreciation for another wordsmith, William Shakespeare, a joy that he passed on to me. One of his favorite quotes when we were growing up, and he said it often, was from King Lear, "How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child." But he did always say it with love, and always said it in jest. So I guess that actually makes me Regan, and we have Goneril and Cordelia, otherwise known as Nancy and Patty. He was a gifted writer. He was an artist, well-traveled, well-read. His love of history was legend. His wit was dry and wicked, and I have to say that most people missed it completely. He was a philosopher and a philanthropist. He had an insatiable curiosity and never stopped creating and learning. He was a teacher and a mentor, a surgeon whose patients loved him. He was a brilliant thinker who willingly shared new medical and scientific discoveries. He was quiet and reserved, even a deep thinker who let his thoughts be known, in some cases whether you wanted to hear them or not. He was a cynic. He was not a fan of organized religion. He had a miserable sense of direction for someone who was so surprisingly aware of his surroundings. On a family trip when we were young, we once circled the Pentagon 17 times looking for a way out. And if that was some kind of incantation, it didn't work. He was always challenging us to do better, be our best selves, reach higher and more broadly. He loved being on and near great bodies of water, whether it's at the old house on Long Beach Island, Caribbean island somewhere, a cruise ship, or just gazing at the lake behind our house in Florida. He was warm, compassionate, loving, affectionate. He gathered around him the best people. If you made it to the inner circle, you were in for life. The OGs, the group of doctors in his South Jersey community who together built Rancocas Valley Hospital, the gang that built Metropolitan Hospital, all playing tennis on Tuesday nights, vacationing as families together. And then the men, a whole nother level of extraordinary, exemplary excellence, his AAOMS board buddies. 7 years of service was not enough, and thus the Past President's Club was born. He considered these men to be his closest friends, his brothers, his dearest allies, his Jefferson family. I'm going to leave that to Bob DeSiggio. You'll hear from him later. More words, uncomplicated grief, which is a term that I just heard. So no unresolved issues, no old hurts. On the whole, I think that we traumatized our father more than he did us, not the other way around, and I can't even imagine the things he dealt with having 3 daughters to raise. The time that someone took the car when she was 15, the time someone got a button stuck up her nose, while kittens being fed and housed under a bed, countless trips to the ER with sports-related injuries, and that's one that spanned the generations. Of course, none of these were me, no names. But we sisters know how lucky we were to have had our parents. It's hard to think of our father without thinking too of our mother. In our lives for over 60 and nearly 70 years. It's a long time to have a relationship with anyone, much less a parent. They loved us unreservedly, and we always knew we were cherished. We felt it. We loved and adored them too, and we said the words out loud to each other often. The love spread to the next generation and the next. They were smitten with their grandchildren and couldn't get enough of them, and all the grandchildren were mad about them both. Words that he felt best described him. He was the beloved and devoted husband to his beloved and devoted wife, our incredible mother. What a team they were. We always say that theirs was a love story for the ages. He was a son, a brother, a husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. Many hats worn on his very humble head. We are thankful and grateful to have had so much time with him. A direct quote from Dr. Lionel Gold, "Age is something you can get past as long as you keep on living." And in final words for our beloved father, he was Dad and will always be in our hearts.
The grandchildren generation is next.
I didn't prepare anything written, did that on purpose, because the last time I tried that, I did not make it through a sentence. I have been very fortunate to be in my 40s and have just lost my last grandparent. I had 3 grandparents until I was almost 41. Not many people my age can say that. The things that I kept coming back to over the last 2 days and really over the last 43 years is how grateful I am to have had the experiences with my grandparents that I was able to share. And to share that with my kids, their great-grandparents as well, or great-grandchildren as well. I said this to my mom yesterday and it made her cry. I said, Grandpa was my favorite. I said, you're not supposed to have favorites, But he was my favorite. You're not supposed to say that to your kids, certainly, but he was my favorite grandparent, for sure. We shared a lot of things together, and as I was growing up, he tried to teach me how to do a lot of things, and a lot of things that, some of which stuck and some of which didn't. Tried to teach me on numerous occasions how to play tennis, and my hand-eye coordination is pretty damn good today at 43, but I'm not as good at tennis as he would probably like me to be. Try to get me how to teach me how to sail in the house behind Beach Haven. I don't know a lick about sailing, even though my parents would love me to know it. I love the water, though. All in all, the thing that I keep coming back to is just grateful. I'm grateful for the time that I had with him. Even as recently as a month and a half ago, I think, when I actually had time, just the two of us. The other thing that I'll leave you with is that when I first was really early in my real estate career, he and I had a conversation, and he asked me what I was doing, and then he asked me what I was doing to help people. And at the time, my response was, well, I'm working really hard to make other people money. And today, at 43, I look back on that conversation, and I don't work in real estate anymore. Today, I own a gym. Today, I help thousands of people get healthier. And I will always come back to that conversation that I had with him 20 plus years ago, and that will always stick with me. Thank you.
Dr. Lionel Gold was many things to many people. He was dad, grandfather, great-grandfather, husband, brother, doctor, mentor, Scotch lover, world traveler, a reader, writer, painter, and my personal favorite, a ball-busting smartass who took great pleasure in going toe-to-toe with you on the latest hot-button topic. But to me, he was Grandpa. He was my sidekick, a confidant, a trusted voice of opinion and reason. He was genuine, thoughtful, and curious, honest, serious, and headstrong. I wanted to be with him, near him, and around him as much as possible. I made yearly pilgrimages to Florida to visit the Gold family royalty, to wine and dine at the hottest clubs and restaurants that West Palm Beach had to offer during the early bird special, and always at the best seat in the house. Eating Klondike bars, hiding Entenmann's coffee cake from Grandma, and always sitting at their tiny circular glass kitchen table and talking about everything and nothing well into the night. Now he's gone, and that hurts. It hurts all of us who knew and loved this extraordinary man. I will miss his sly little chuckle, the way he put his hands in a steeple when he was really paying attention or was thinking of something thoughtful to say in response. I will miss hearing the playful banter he and my husband Justin shared, and also hearing the little voices of my daughters, Lila and Teddy, getting excited to FaceTime with Grandpa Lionel to show him their latest and greatest artistic creations from school that day. I actually have an envelope with me of art that they wanted me to mail to Grandpa Lionel that I just never got around to doing for one reason or another. But I will tell you what I will get around to doing. I will look at my daughter Lila and hug her and remind her that I named her after Lionel. I will tell my little hurricane Teddy that she reminds me of myself and that Grandpa Lionel secretly loved all the trouble I caused as a little child. I will tell Justin that Grandpa Lionel clearly loved him as much, if not more, in return. And I would tell him that I love him and will miss him more than he will ever know. Grandpa, cheers to you for bringing all these people together to celebrate your wonderful life. And cheers to all of us who were lucky enough to know Dr. Lionel Gold.
Eric, are they off poem? Alright, finish I think sounds like a poem to me. For your grandpa. Sienna. I was born into a role with four. Being a granddaughter, I had no idea what was in store. For beautiful souls that were there to comfort, nurture, and guide me through their own experience. Life lessons they shared, wisdom they spared, I'll always yearn for more. Now my active role as a granddaughter has come to an end, and it has been a beautiful ride and everything I could have wished for. Grandpa, you know how much I love you because I told you every time. You're an influence on me and always encouraging me. I was always proud to share my journeys with you and Grandma. And my greatest gift was to be able to introduce you to Sienna, and to give your daughter, my mom, the opportunity to give to Sienna everything that you and Grandma gave to me and everything you meant to me.
All right, taking turns. It's been really hard to put down onto words, or put down words on how I feel about my grandfather. And as my aunt had said earlier, you know, historic and legendary were kind of the first words that I really thought of. Dr. Lionel Gold, to many of you, Grandpa to me, emulated light and knowledge in ways that all of us hope to achieve. My grandfather excelled at all things in his life. He was a loving husband, a wonderful father, adoring grandfather, and great-grandfather, a good friend, and an excellent doctor and professor. If you know him well, that means you got to share many laughs, deep conversations, and the occasional tough love. And what I want to say about my grandfather's tough love is that my grandfather saw the best in everyone and just wanted others to see themselves the way he saw them, which was with love and empathy. It is 1 in 100 million to have someone in your life who was their absolute authentic self and always inspiring and supporting you to do the same. My grandfather cared deeply for the world and people around him. I'm sure many of you can remember the moments when he would walk into the room and the smiles on people's faces would happen simultaneously. I'm beyond grateful to know that a man like Lionel helped shape a part of me, and I know that many of us here today will cherish those special moments we shared with him.
One of my earliest childhood memories is sitting side by side with my grandpa at the dining room table and looking at slides of infected, cancerous, and also healthy samples of human tissue. For the life of me, I can't remember how that activity started, but it's one that was repeated many times when I was a kid. Once in his office at Jefferson, he passed me a few fine-tipped pens with red, blue, and green ink and a yellow legal pad so that I could sketch out the images I was looking at through his microscope. My grandfather was a scientist, a surgeon, an artist, and a writer. He was also a teacher, both at the hospital and at home. Throughout my entire life, he encouraged and egged on my insatiable curiosity about science, literature, art, and the world at large. He sent me articles that he had cut out of the newspaper, always with surgical precision, and always with a handwritten note folded into the envelope. We had long talks about whatever political mishegas was happening at the moment, and he taught me select Yiddish words and phrases that always seemed to describe the situation perfectly. From an early age, he taught me that art, writing, and science were inextricably linked. And also from an early age, he taught me how to drink scotch, Irish whiskey, and bourbon. Under his tutelage, I grew up to be a woman who could confidently order a Macallan 12 neat at the bar when I was still a few years shy of 21. My grandfather was known to most as Dr. Lionel Gold. They knew him for his brilliance, his prowess in the operating room and pathology lab, his generosity, and his particular strain of kindness that was often encased in a spiky outer layer. If you didn't know him well, he probably came off as, like my mother said, a curmudgeon. But those of us who did know him, his friends, his colleagues, and his family, knew that those wry jabs were his love language. My grandfather was warm and affectionate and always made time for his family, especially his grandchildren. He pushed us to do our best and then do even more. He asked us about our lives and plans for the future because he wanted to know us as people, not just as his family. He posed challenging questions and started debates because he wanted us to think critically and speak with conviction. He expected a lot of us, and we were all eager to meet his expectations. Most of all, he loved us unconditionally with everything he had, and we will always love him.
sign on.
I'm going to present a totally different perspective. The one thing no one mentioned tonight, this afternoon, is Lionel was also a father-in-law. He was my father-in-law. For those that don't know me, I'm Arnon Goranczyk, Nancy's husband. And I've been Lionel's son-in-law for almost 50 years. I'd like to speak briefly about my relationship with Lionel, and in particular, at the polar ends of our relationship. What I'm going to say will begin with humor and will likely end on a serious note and possibly even controversial. I met Nancy in May 1972. How we met is another story. But the date indicates that we've been together for almost 50 years, and in March 2023, we'll celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary. Our relationship blossomed very quickly that summer of 1972, and by midsummer, we admit, we were already living together in a house of one of my friends at the edge of Penn's campus on 42nd Street. We agreed that it was time to meet each other's parents. Since Nancy's parents lived 30 minutes away, my initial introduction to Nancy's parents occurred in mid-July 1972 when we traveled to Cherry Hill for dinner. That first meeting left an indelible memory, certainly on me, and possibly on Nancy as well. In the middle of the meal, Lionel turned to me, looked me straight in the face, and asked me, "Are you living with my daughter?" I immediately felt a kick under the table because Nancy was sitting right next to me. And I knew what I had to say. "No, sir, we are not." Mercifully, Lionel left the subject go. So my relationship with Lionel began with a big lie. Many years later, at the opposite end of our long-term relationship, I admitted the big lie to Lionel. He just laughed it off. In those early months, I often thought that I had failed a big test. But when I asked Lionel for his daughter's hand in marriage in October 1972, he readily agreed. And for that I am forever grateful. I would now like to speak about the opposite end of my long-term relationship with Lionel, and in particular, that peculiar relationship between a father-in-law and a son-in-law. No doubt, most of the men in this room are familiar with that relationship. At the beginning of a daughter's marriage, the father of the bride is filled with doubt. Will this boy be good enough for my daughter? Will he faithfully fulfill his wedding vows? Will he be able to support my daughter in the manner I would like to see her supported? I think these doubts are magnified when the father has no sons, only daughters, as was the case with Lionel with his 3 daughters. The son-in-law also has doubts. Will I be able to meet the expectations of my father-in-law for his daughter? I also think there exists an even deeper psychological issue at play during most of a marriage between the father-in-law and the son-in-law. Deep down, I wonder if the son-in-law wonders for the need for a second father-son relationship at all. The son-in-law might ask himself, as I know I did, I have a father.
Do I really need a second one? For all these reasons, and while on the surface that father-in-law, son-in-law relationship appears great to the family, it might be arm's length in reality. I think that was true with my relationship with Lionel for many years. All that changed when my own father passed in 2019. After that, we spent more one-on-one quality time together than we had ever done in the past. We had dinners together at Lionsgate. I know we established a much stronger bond between us these last 2 years than we ever had in the previous 48. More than ever, we grew to appreciate each other as individuals and as fathers and sons. And with that came a sense, I believe, of mutual admiration. So when we reach the end of that almost 50-year relationship, I know I will truly miss having Lionel in my life. Thank you for joining us today at this time of grieving and remembrance.
Bob?
Thank you for inviting me to speak this afternoon. So what do you say about the man who changed your life forever? In the fall of 1987, I was a nervous Penn dental student on my way to an interview at Jefferson for oral and maxillofacial surgery program. I took the bus from West Philly, which by the way was the first time I was ever on a public bus, to Jefferson. And I traveled, and while I traveled, I recited to myself what I was going to say during my interview. I was very nervous. When I arrived at Jefferson, I was greeted by Mary Mays, our office secretary, who promptly escorted me into Dr. Gold's office. I walked in the office, and there was Dr. Gold, leaning back in his chair, smoking his pipe. Smoke filled the room. And I felt immediately at ease. I felt like I was in my own living room, talking to my own father, who was smoking his pipe. We had a pleasant talk about pathology, TMJ surgery, and orthognathic surgery. And I knew at that very moment during that interview that I wanted Dr. Gold to teach me everything about oral and maxillofacial surgery and about life in general. He was a great mentor during my residency. The most memorable times was when he escorted all the residents to the pathology lab, and we all took a seat under the multi-head microscope, and he quizzed us. And his favorite view under the microscope, he would say, "Let's look at it under high drive." He quizzed us continually, and if we answered incorrectly, he would explain why we were incorrect. He was never mad, he was never angry, he just wanted to teach us. He was a fantastic teacher. I remember like it was yesterday, spending hours in the OR with Dr. Gold and Dr. Paul Cohen. It was so amusing how they would interact and continually disagree regarding the surgery at hand. We would sit there as residents for hours watching them fight. When I finished the program, he asked me to stay on as a faculty member. And this was another life-changing moment for me, because I got to spend more time with Dr. Gold. I enjoyed teaching, and I enjoyed being taught by Dr. Gold. Some days we would just sit in his office and talk for hours about oral surgery and life in general. He taught me how to become a surgeon, a teacher, a husband, and a father. Dr. Gold paved my way to medical school and to become the successor in the department. He guided me every step of the way to establish an independent department in the medical school. Dr. Gold, Walter Cohen, and I developed the Institute of Graduate Dental Biosciences at Jefferson, an institution like no other, internationally or nationally. Dr. Gold was a mentor, a teacher, and friend to thousands of people. So many people have Dr. Gold to thank for their prosperous and fulfilled lives. I sent out a text to the Jefferson alumni immediately after Kathy called me on Tuesday. A few of the responses are as follows. Paul Streck said, Dr. Gold's passing is deeply saddening. Dave Winan said, terribly saddening. He was an incredible friend, mentor, and clinician. It was a privilege to have known him. Josh Foxham said, rest in peace, Dr. Gold. I will never forget all those incredible slides and path lectures. He will be missed. Jeff Valenti said he had a passion for oral pathology and educating residents. It was a great experience working for him, and he will be missed. Joe Arcuri said, men of his caliber will never truly be replaced. He had a dry sense of humor that I truly appreciated, a model for professionalism, humility, and respect for all. He will not be forgotten. Frank DeRoba said he was a selfless man. It was an honor to have known him. Brad Bulow said he was a dedicated educator who impacted generations of surgeons. Allison Rodriguez said he was a great educator, mentor, and friend, and it was a privilege to have known him. He will be sadly missed. Vicky Palermo sent a picture of a glass of scotch and said, cheers to the man of incredible character, uncompromising integrity, true giant in our field, and a life well lived. Mike Palma said he was truly an inspiration for so many. I can honestly say there isn't a day in practice that doesn't go by where I don't think about him, something he said, or what would Dr. Gold do? Dan Taub said there are so many incredible memories of Dr. Gold, my first OMFS chair, mentor, and friend. One of my favorites is an instance 10 years ago when he must have seen the stress in my eyes after a long day's work. He took me by the shoulder into his office for a glass of scotch, hidden in his drawer. We shared some drinks and his always present ginger snap cookies, talking and laughing. Typical Dr. Gold. I received so many more comments, way too many to say here. Dr. Gold, we will always remember you as a special person who loved to educate residents and who has changed the lives of many. I love you, Dr. Gold. You were my second father, and I was the son you never had. I will miss you forever, and until we are reunited somewhere. Thank you for all you have done for me and many others. God bless you.
If my father had been here, he would have been humbled by all the very wonderful things being said about him. He touched so many lives in all of his roles as a husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, colleague, teacher. And he was truly one of the lucky ones. He loved what he did for a living. Not many people can say that. The best legacy is the one passed down through generations. The door by door, from generation to generation. That's what he did, and we will always remember the Lionel stories and the incredible man that he was. And now for the only Jewish part of this service, the mourner's cottage. Yikadal v'yishtabah kabash shemei rabah v'yomah tivarah kute v'yamlich makute ויכון ותימכון וחיי בכל בית ישראל באהבה ובזמן קריב ויראו אמן. יהי שמי רבא מבורך לעולם ועולמי עולמיה. ישתבח ויתפאר ויתמרא ויזרע ותשגשג. יתהלל 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 שמי קודשה ברכו. לעולם בין כל ברכתה ושרתה ושפחתה ונעמתה. Ravnaran Virvan Viru Amen. Yehei Shalom Rava Yishmaya Vikayin Alinu Yoko Yisrael Viru Amen. Ose Shalom B'mama Huya Ose Shalom Alenu Yako Yisrael Viru Amen. Thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you for the support that you've shown the Gold family. And he loved every part of his life. He loved the hospital, he loved all of you guys and his family. Thank you very much.